In a packed arena, a duel of destiny unfolds between a noble, a commoner, and a girl. The noble, Weiss, scoffs at his opponent's chances, utterly convinced of his own superiority. With a confident cry, Weiss lunges forward, determined to make a public spectacle of his foe. But in a shocking turn, the noble is swiftly defeated, left to crumble in the pouring rain. This is the story of Weiss Vincent, the infamous villainous noble whose downfall was just beginning. In another world, a gamer watches this exact scene play out, having just lost as the character Weiss. Overwhelmed by the game's ending, the player suddenly collapses, his own life coming to an abrupt end. He awakens not in his room, but as a child in the grand mansion of the very same Vincent family. A maid runs in terror down a dark hallway, her breath catching in her throat from sheer panic. She finds herself at the mercy of a young Weiss, who now wields a cruel new perspective on his second life. He savors the moment, a cruel smirk playing on his lips as he relishes her terror. The maid's eyes dart in panic before she squeezes them shut, bracing for the worst. She sits bound on the cold floor, completely at the mercy of the young noble. But suddenly Weiss's villainous expression shatters into one of utter disbelief. His mind reels with confusion, questioning who he is and where he could possibly be. He recoils in panic, brandishing a rod as if seeing the scene for the very first time. A memory flashes through his mind. He was just playing a game moments ago. The maid looks up at him with concern while he's struck by her unexpected beauty. A sense of familiarity washes over him as he realizes he might know this girl, and this name. The horrifying truth dawns on him. He has become the abusive villain from the game. He confirms his new identity without a doubt. He is Weiss Vincent, the villain from the game Noblesse Oblige. He vividly remembers the school fantasy game, a world he had conquered multiple times. In that game, Weiss was the primary obstacle for the protagonist, Alan, during the school arc. The character was known as the lowest kind of scum, using his power to relentlessly torment the weak. After being thoroughly defeated by the hero, Weiss lost everything and became a servant of the Demon King. His pathetic story ended with him being used as a human shield, leading to a miserable death. He turns back to the present, realizing the tied-up girl must be the maid, Lilith Scarlet. A memory from the game surfaces, reminding him that the original Weiss had a cruel hobby of tormenting Lilith. He is utterly repulsed by his character's past actions, questioning the villain's horrible nature. His immediate priority becomes clear. He must untie the beautiful girl he's trapped. He pauses, realizing a sudden act of kindness might seem suspicious to the terrified maid. Deciding he must act, he awkwardly moves to untie her, announcing the punishment is over. His eyes widen in shock as he spots the cruel marks left on her neck from his previous self's abuse. Overcome with pity for the trembling girl, he decides to test his new world's abilities. He focuses his energy, casting a healing spell he only knew from the game. The marks on her neck instantly fade, proving his gamer knowledge is real. He recalls this was a secret healing spell, a hidden gem he learned from a strategy book. Trying to maintain his villainous facade, he awkwardly insists it was just for practice. Lilith bursts into tears of pure, unadulterated joy, thanking him with all her heart. Her overwhelming gratitude makes him realize the true depth of the original Weiss's cruelty. He awkwardly calls out to Lilith, unsure how to handle her emotional state. He drops the villain act entirely, offering a heartfelt apology and promising to never hurt her again. His complete personality shift leaves the maid utterly frozen in shock. Later at the dinner table, the entire staff watches him with bated breath, expecting the worst. The family butler, Zevis, anticipates the usual tantrum of thrown plates and insults. But Weiss calmly declares he was wrong to disrespect food, showing a flicker of maturity. He then compliments the meal's seasoning, a first in the history of the Vincent household. The butler stares in utter disbelief, barely able to comprehend the young master's words. Zevis is suddenly overcome with emotion, crying out in gratitude for the unexpected praise. Weiss is baffled by the staff's tearful celebration over a simple compliment, a testament to his former tyranny. He realizes the staff is so moved by this small change, they haven't noticed he's a completely different person. It dawns on him just how truly terrible the original Weiss must have been to his household. Determined to change, his first act is to get rid of the cruel rod he once used on Lilith. He takes the instrument of his past villainy outside, vowing to become a better person. His thoughts turn to the future, knowing the academy entrance exam is only 2 years away. He recalls from the game that his character's downfall began after losing a combat test to the protagonist. A new path becomes clear. If he can defeat the protagonist, he might just change his fate. He casts the rod into a fiery furnace, symbolically destroying the last remnant of his cruel past. With burning resolve, he swears to do whatever it takes to avoid his character's path to ruin. His intense training begins at once, pushing his body to the brink to prepare for the trials ahead. A mysterious figure calls out to Weiss, interrupting his moment of exhaustion. His new trainer, the S-rank adventurer Milk Avitas, scolds him for slacking off. She seems to relent, telling him to take a proper rest if he needs it. But her words are a trap, threatening him with the shame of being a loser if he stops now. He recalls using his family's influence to hire the best tutor possible, enduring her brutal training regimen. His chosen mentor is none other than Milk Avitas, the game's ultimate swordsman from the final chapter. He had asked for merciless training, forgetting that in the game, she was known for her terrifyingly sadistic nature. Back in the present, Lilith brings him a headband he requested, explaining the meaning of the symbol on it. Wearing the headband of effort, he declares his resolve to push himself to the absolute limit. He remembers the game's brutal difficulty, a death game so hard that only repeated attempts could lead to victory. He realizes that in both his lives he's never truly pushed his body, and failure now means certain doom. While the physical conditioning is grueling, he knows it's the foundation for mastering both sword and sorcery. His new life starts each day with rigorous sword practice under his tutor's unforgiving gaze. This is followed by endless running for stamina and a brutal regimen of muscle training. From dawn till dusk, he repeats the cycle, pushing his body far beyond its previous limits. He grits his teeth and continues the agonizing exercises, refusing to give in to the exhaustion. Even his diet has changed, with the butler now serving a high-protein menu to fuel his intense workouts. 2 weeks later, a tired Weiss acknowledges that diet is just as crucial as magic for recovery. He thanks the butler for his support, knowing he couldn't survive this regimen without the staff's help. After 3 weeks of relentless effort, he pauses, reflecting on the brutal path he has chosen. He reflects on the hellish training where each day under Milk's supervision felt like an entire month. The sun sets on another grueling day, the time passing in a blur of non-stop effort. Having finally adapted to the physical regimen, Weiss declares he's ready to hire a magic teacher. Worn out by Milk's harshness, he secretly hopes his new tutor will be a much kinder person. A mysterious figure in a large wizard's hat makes a dramatic, magical entrance into the room. His hopes are utterly shattered as his swordmaster, Milk Avitas, is revealed to be his magic teacher as well. She smirks, informing him that her mastery extends to both the blade and the arcane arts. Weiss confronts the butler, who explains that Milk is a rare genius capable of wielding 2 great magic attributes. His sarcastic request for a gentle lesson is met with a chillingly sweet promise from his sadistic tutor. The very next day, his gentle magic training has him enduring a raging torrent of water under her command. He screams in agony as Milk orders him to endure the waterfall's crushing force for 2 more hours. She coldly explains that mana can only be increased through this kind of relentless, repetitive training. Her orders are simple and cruel. Repeat this hellish routine daily until he collapses from exhaustion. True to her word, he pushes himself to the point of collapse, found later by a frantic Lilith. From that day forward, his life becomes a non-stop cycle of basic magic conditioning. His grueling regimen expands to include practical combat training against his merciless tutor. She effortlessly exploits his every weakness, pointing out his sloppy form as he's thrown to the ground. Thankfully, Lilith is always nearby to cast a healing spell, mending his battered body after each session. While Lilith offers her unwavering support, Milk cruelly refers to him as nothing more than a good punching bag. Despite the constant pain, Weiss can't help but feel that something about this new life is strange. He pushes through the pain, questioning how his formerly lazy self is now capable of such intense effort. He recalls his past life as a reclusive gamer, a living corpse who surrendered at the first sign of trouble. He struggles to understand the difference between his past and present, watching his new self train relentlessly. 2 months into his brutal training, he takes a rare moment of rest by the waterfall. To his shock, his merciless tutor approaches and gently pats him on the head. With a rare, satisfied smile, she praises his impressive improvement, noting he completed the task in only 2 hours. Flustered by the head pat, he wonders if this is her twisted version of a gentle lesson. She clarifies her method, promising to reward every achievement with a simple pat on the head. He grimaces, realizing the ratio of her brutal stick to her simple carrot is wildly off. Just as Lilith arrives, Milk's expression turns sinister, ominously disagreeing with his assessment. Lilith arrives with lunch, finding Weiss and Milk resting on the grass after a tough session. Milk explains her role is to be the stick, as he already gets plenty of carrots from others. She points to Lilith, reminding him that this support is the carrot that helps him persevere. While Lilith is completely puzzled, Weiss has a sudden, profound realization. He understands that he can only push himself this hard because of the people around him. He mentally thanks Zevis for the specialized meals and Lilith for her unwavering support. He even acknowledges Milk, who pushes him relentlessly for the sake of his own growth. Taking a bite of his food, he admits he couldn't have come this far without their help. He reflects on how both his past self and the original Weiss were completely selfish. This selfishness, he realizes, is why he was so alone in his previous life, with no one to guide or support him. He realizes that what he truly needed was a mix of harsh discipline and gentle support. With newfound determination, he vows to no longer live just for his own selfish desires. His goal shifts to making Lilith and the others who helped him proud of his efforts. He reflects that his only motivation until now was the simple, desperate fear of his own ruin. Flanked by his allies, he declares he will avoid his destructive fate for everyone's sake. His training intensifies, pushing him to his absolute limits day in and day out. Milk's regimen becomes even more brutal, forcing him to train until he physically collapses. The scene changes, showing a sprawling town built over a river, signaling a new journey. Weiss walks through the town with Milk and Lilith, wryly noting his unusual entourage. He recognizes this as League Belt Town, the first major stop for the protagonist in the game. He internally fumes, accusing his tutor of cheating with her impossible standards. As they walk, local thugs start harassing them, confirming his memory of the town's poor security. Stealing his resolve, Weiss turns to his tutor and asks who his opponent for the test will be. He learns that after 3 months of training, his practical exam will be a real combat test in this very city. Milk's sinister smile sends a shiver down his spine, making him realize she has something truly awful planned. While Lilith cheers him on, Weiss is filled with dread, knowing his tutor's idea of a good opponent is terrifying. Unbeknownst to them, a group of local ruffians has spotted their party from a distance. The thugs leer at the group, making crude comments about Lilith and marking her as a target. While Lilith looks on with concern, Weiss silently warns the thugs that they're provoking a truly deadly woman. He recalls from the game that this place is a notorious den of thugs, the worst town on the continent. Weiss steals his resolve, knowing he must protect Lilith from the local thugs no matter what. Milk casually advises them to ignore the ruffians, but Weiss's expression hardens with surprise. Lilith cheerfully agrees with her master, completely oblivious to the tension. As they walk, Weiss glances back, momentarily thinking he sensed a terrifying aura from the seemingly innocent Lilith. Their destination is revealed to be the local Adventurers Guild, a hub for mercenaries and warriors. Inside, a man immediately starts harassing Lilith and the hooded Milk at the counter. The same group of thugs from earlier approaches, their expressions promising trouble. They surround the young noble, aggressively demanding he come outside to settle things. A horrifying realization strikes Weiss. These are the infamous Boudin brothers, the opponents Milk chose for his test. His tutor calmly lists their heinous crimes, explaining they've evaded justice by bribing officials. Milk explains the corrupt officials have been handled, encouraging Weiss to go all out against his criminal opponents. While the thugs drag him into an alley, Milk begins to explain the harsh reality of his situation. His tutor acknowledges his powerful determination, but highlights his complete lack of real combat experience. She reasons that facing a real battle is inevitable, so it's better to get his first experience over with now. She warns him that she won't always be there to protect him, and his next fight could be a lonely, fatal one. His tutor's reassuring smile returns as she promises to help if things get dangerous, boosting his confidence for the fight. He screams in utter panic for his tutor, realizing she has completely disappeared just as the thugs lead him away. He curses his tutor for tricking him, realizing she and Lilith have vanished, leaving him to face the thugs alone. He panics, realizing his only reason for confronting them was the false belief that his teacher had his back. Despite his fear, he knows he has no choice but to brace himself and fight, as retreat is not an option. He sets a grim objective for himself, to take one of their arms to prove his strength. He assesses the situation, realizing that despite their appearance, the thugs are skilled fighters and he's at a disadvantage. As he's led into the alley, he knows a fight is unavoidable and desperately tries to formulate a plan. He remembers his tutor's final words of advice, telling him to trust in his training to survive. He focuses on a specific lesson from his tutor, hoping it will be the key to his survival. Unbeknownst to him, Milk and Lilith watch from afar as he's led through a gate into the alley. Meanwhile, Milk explains to a concerned Lilith that her deception was a necessary push to motivate him. She reasons that a true test can't have a safety net, though she quietly resolves to step in if his life is truly in danger. The scene flashes back to the guild where the thugs first approached, their leader recognizing them from the street. His cronies immediately zero in on Lilith, their leering comments making their vile intentions clear. The thugs boastfully declare their control over the town surrounding the group. The leader reveals their vile intentions, recalling their past victims who suffered a terrible fate. But instead of fear, Lilith's eyes burn with an unexpected and terrifying rage. In an instant, a brutal strike lands before anyone can even react. The remaining thugs stare in disbelief as the scene is splattered with the aftermath. A hand descends from above, reaching for another unsuspecting ruffian. One of the men cries out in agony, his arm suddenly severed from his body. As chaos erupts among the gang, Weiss finally draws his own blade. He remembers his tutor's words, steeling himself to make the first move. A flashback reveals a bizarre lesson where Milk taught him the importance of catching an opponent off guard. She explained that even the strongest masters fall if struck before they can react. The thugs look on in confusion as Milk simplifies her brutal lesson. The core of her teaching was simple: strike before your opponent even thinks to move. Putting the lesson into practice, Weiss ducks under a wild swing and delivers a swift kick. He reflects on his past self's fatal flaw, a lifetime of avoiding difficult decisions. A memory surfaces of his old self, always believing tomorrow's version of him would solve today's problems. He now understands that waiting for the future to fix things is a fool's errand. With this new clarity, he resolves to act decisively, taking down his opponents in a flurry of motion. He unleashes a final, powerful attack, vowing to leave his lazy, cowardly past behind for good. Exhausted but triumphant, Weiss looks upon the defeated thugs, his first real battle a resounding success. He analyzes his victory, realizing he only won by striking before his opponents could prepare. Just as he feels a sense of accomplishment, his tutor approaches and gives him a harsh grade of 70 points. Milk explains a true master would have acted sooner, while Lilith enthusiastically gives him a perfect score. Weiss looks gratefully at his tutor and his maid, acknowledging their different but equally important perspectives. He lightly scolds his tutor for disappearing, but she just laughs off his very real terror. His attention is suddenly drawn to a dark stain on Lilith's sleeve as she beams with pride. He points out what looks like blood, but she calmly dismisses it as his imagination while wiping it away. Elsewhere, a group of women previously held captive by the thugs are finally safe and sound. The news spreads that over 20 members of a notorious gang were arrested after being found incapacitated. A report confirms that while none of the bandits were killed, they were subdued with such force they were left unable to speak. The news reports that Weiss assisted in the arrest of the notorious Bowdoin brothers. Elsewhere, a mysterious girl reads the news, her interest piqued by Weiss's name. A letter of thanks and a reward arrive at the Vincent mansion, but Weiss feigns ignorance about the incident. Lilith's admiration for her young master continues to grow with each passing day. His name begins to circulate, reaching the ears of the same mysterious silver-haired girl. Back in training, Weiss's growth is explosive, his power surging with every session. A year and a half passes in a blur of relentless training under the waterfall. His daily routine is a brutal cycle of pushing his mana and stamina to their absolute breaking points. But suddenly, something within him shifts, a new level of power awakening. He now shatters obstacles with ease, no longer collapsing from the strain of his training. He now feels the mana flowing through his body, even able to detect enemies through solid walls. At dinner, Zevis inquires about his magic training, to which Weiss calmly confirms his progress. He internally complains about the difficulty of mastering the 4 elements under Milk's Spartan regimen. The true challenge lies in training all 4 elements equally, a feat that astounds even the butler. He glances out the window, concluding that his demonic tutor is far more terrifying than any criminal gang. The butler explains that Milk's harsh methods are a direct result of Weiss's own extraordinary talent. Zevis reveals a fundamental rule of their world: Most mages are limited to mastering only one element. He points out that even the legendary Milk, an S-rank adventurer, can only command two elements. But Weiss possesses an exceptionally rare talent, capable of wielding all four magical elements. The butler marvels that this incredible potential would have remained dormant if not for his young master's newfound diligence. The butler looks on with immense pride, acknowledging how truly admirable his young master has become. Zavis stands alone in the grand dining hall, quietly contemplating the boy's incredible transformation. A flashback reveals a terrified Weiss, cowering and pleading for his tutor to stop her harsh training. Lilith is shown shielding the boy from Milk's relentless wooden sword attacks, begging her to show mercy. His tutor's sharp gaze narrows, sensing he's been secretly practicing a different kind of magic. Under the full moon, she demands he reveal his secret, much to his tearful reluctance. He finally demonstrates his hidden power, summoning both light and dark magic into his hands. Milk and Lilith watch in disbelief as they realize he can wield the legendary light and dark elements. Weiss explains with a sly grin that he had hoped to perfect this new power before revealing it. He unleashes the full, awe-inspiring result of his secret training, leaving his companions utterly speechless. The night gives way to day, and later, a lavish party is in full swing at a grand estate. Lilith worries about his fatigue, but Weiss brushes it off, recalling his successful completion of a new spell. He remembers creating Dark Heal, a powerful magic that heals allies and curses enemies, but left him completely drained. While observing the guests, he notices some with assassin-like movements, just as a voice calls his name. He turns to see a stunning young noblewoman with long, flowing hair looking directly at him. Her shimmering hair and striking red eyes are instantly familiar, and he recognizes her as Countess Cynthia Violetta. The shocking truth hits him. He's face to face with Cynthia Violetta, the main heroine of the game. She mocks his appearance, and he remembers that in the game, Cynthia despised the villainous Weiss more than anyone. He recalls that Cynthia herself was the one who ultimately brought about his character's brutal demise. He tries to calm himself, knowing he hasn't wronged her yet, but a confusing memory of the original Weiss surfaces. He's hit with a memory of his past self threatening Cynthia, who now confronts him about that very incident. She furiously recounts how he used his title to force her into his room, her words dripping with contempt. Overwhelmed with guilt, Weiss bows deeply, offering a sincere and public apology for his past self's shameful behavior. He hopes his genuine remorse might quell her anger, deciding to retreat before causing more trouble. He resigns himself to his fate, believing a disgraced noble like him should never get close to the story's heroine. But just as he's about to walk away, Cynthia unexpectedly grabs his hand, stopping him in his tracks. To his utter shock, she leads him through the crowd, with a bewildered Lilith watching from afar. With a captivating gaze, Cynthia calmly asks the stunned Weiss if he would like to dance with her. He's completely flustered by the sudden turn of events, while Lilith frantically tries to warn him from the sidelines. Cynthia looks at him with a charming, enigmatic smile, leaving him utterly captivated and confused. The scene shifts to the present, where Weiss sits awkwardly across from Cynthia during a seemingly pleasant tea time. He recalls the night of the party, where Cynthia surprised him by revealing she knew he had changed. She had heard rumors of his grueling training and questioned him about his memory loss regarding their previous hostile encounter. Flustered, he had pulled her close during the dance, unable to properly articulate an apology for the original Weiss's actions. She then whispered a question, asking if he'd also forgotten his past confession of affection for her, leaving him speechless as the dance ended. After Cynthia departed, leaving a lasting impression, the story introduces his intimidating father, Ajado Vincent. A letter from his father had announced a dinner party with Cynthia, sending Weiss into a panic as her carriage arrived moments later. He realizes this entire situation was orchestrated by his manipulative father, which brings the story back to the present. Despite his personal feelings, he knows he must stay away from her, as she is fated to be with the game's protagonist, Alan. He fears that altering the main romance would derail the entire plot, leaving him unable to use his game knowledge to survive. Cynthia recalls his past self's arrogant confession, noting how his sincere apology is a complete reversal. With a charming smile, she admits that since he's changed, she wouldn't be opposed to his feelings anymore. Weiss panics, realizing his fear of being liked has come true, and remembering how quickly she fell for the hero in the game. He knows that while she's soft-hearted, she becomes incredibly devoted once in love, and he must somehow push her away. His shy demeanor only makes her find him cuter, causing her affection for him to rise against his will. Startled by Lilith's arrival with tea, he lets out a pathetic yelp, hoping the uncool sound will disgust Cynthia. The plan backfires spectacularly, as Cynthia finds his reaction adorable, her affection growing even stronger. She then reveals the true purpose of their meeting, an engagement dinner, which she has now decided to accept. Elsewhere, his father Agato smugly recalls seeing them dance and immediately setting up the engagement without hesitation. As Cynthia's carriage departs, Weiss internally screams at his meddling father for arranging an engagement behind his back. He finally understands that his father's excessive spoiling is the true reason the original Weiss became a villain. Lilith tearfully begs him to be happy with Cynthia before suddenly dashing away at an impossible speed. His tutor appears, assigning him the task of chasing Lilith, explaining the maid is heartbroken over his sudden engagement. Under threat of a grim punishment, Weiss sprints after her, realizing he owes Lilith a great debt for her constant support. He chases her desperately, acknowledging that her support was the only thing that saved him from his own laziness. Despite his pleas, Lilith easily outpaces him, leaving him stunned that he can't catch her even with all his might. Their chase defies gravity as they leap across a canyon, with Weiss begging her to listen while she resigns herself to her fate. He shouts that she is precious to him and that the engagement was his father's unilateral decision, not his own. He reveals his plan to take her to the academy as his personal servant, a position reserved for the most trusted. She finally understands his true intentions, playfully asking if he'll chase her forever before dashing off once more. He pushes himself to the brink of collapse, screaming with sheer exertion as Lilith watches with a tender expression. She playfully relents, declaring she will now be his mistress as he bows in exhaustion in the distance. Her shocking words give him a second wind, and he leaps off the cliff after her with renewed vigor. The two of them become tiny specks as they fall through the air above the vast canyon. He catches her mid-fall, and she embraces him, promising to keep their new, complicated relationship a secret. Unseen, Cynthia and Milk observe the scene, as Weiss reflects on getting engaged to one girl while starting an affair with another. The focus shifts to the game's protagonist, Alan, training hard as Weiss wonders if his rival is prepared for the upcoming entrance exam. Meanwhile, Lilith is shown resting peacefully, a serene figure amidst the unfolding drama. Cynthia breaks the fourth wall, addressing the audience with a charming and knowing smile. Weiss internally curses his father, realizing the man's meddling has entangled him with both Cynthia and Lilith. His tutor announces the end of basic training, declaring it's time for some practical sparring. To his surprise, both Cynthia and Lilith have joined his training sessions to prepare for the academy exam. He realizes that while neither of them needed the training, Cynthia's extra effort could make her even more powerful than in the game. Milk pits him against Cynthia for the first match, warning him not to be captivated by his fiancée and hold back. Before the match officially begins, Cynthia lunges at him, catching him completely off guard. He barely manages to block her powerful kick with his sword, struggling against the unexpected force. As Milk smirks, Cynthia reminds him of their tutor's most important lesson. The first move is everything. He focuses intensely, narrowly parrying her swift attack as she reappears in a flash. He remembers her signature move from the game, infusing her legs with ice magic to attack from his blind spots. He lands a gentle tap on her head, but she reacts with dramatic flair, causing him to panic as Milk ends the spar. Cynthia fumes, frustrated that her attack was so easily dodged, while Milk questions how Weiss tracked her speed. His tutor wastes no time, immediately pitting him against Lilith for his next sparring match. Weiss hesitates to fight a maid, but a flashback to her superhuman feats makes him realize this could be a fight for his life. The match begins with Lilith unleashing a terrifyingly fast barrage of strikes, putting him on the defensive. He grits his teeth, barely managing to parry her relentless assault as their wooden swords clash. Milk notes that his ability to track high-speed movement wasn't a fluke, while Weiss panics over Lilith's unexpected strength. He realizes that despite her inexperience with magic, her speed and swordsmanship far surpass his own. Pushed into a corner, Weiss decides to unleash his ultimate secret spell, Dark Heal. Lilith instantly recognizes his original magic, a powerful skill that heals allies while cursing any enemies inside its circle. She spots a fatal flaw in his plan. To cast the spell, he's dropped his sword, leaving himself completely defenseless. He smirks, knowing Lilith has no choice but to charge into his trap, seizing the opening he intentionally left. Her blade clashes against an invisible force just before it reaches him, her attack completely nullified. Weiss reveals his trump card, an absolute barrier created by combining light and dark magic, augmented by his Dark Eye ability. He explains that even if he can't match her speed, he can outlast her attacks as long as his mana holds. But just as he taunts her, Cynthia screams a warning as Lilith suddenly stumbles and collapses to the ground. After the match, Milk questions his new magic while a recovering Lilith is tended to by a concerned Cynthia. Weiss explains his Dark Heal spell inflicts a host of debilitating debuffs on any enemy within its range. He then reveals the spell's true power. It steals his opponent's stats and allows him to either keep them or grant them to his allies. The girls are left speechless by his overpowered ability, and Weiss realizes this is the perfect moment for an epic line. But before he can speak, Milk interrupts by challenging him to a duel, demanding he use his new power against her. The days blur into months of brutal training, leaving the awkward tension between him, Cynthia, and Lilith completely unresolved. The day of the entrance exam finally arrives, and the group stands before the imposing gates of the Noblesse Magic Academy. A pompous noble suddenly declares his vile intention to take a young girl as his fourth wife, shocking the nearby girls. Misinterpreting the situation, Lilith declares she'll fetch strong alcohol to snap him out of his daze. The scene pans over the grand and prestigious Noblesse Magic Academy, a beacon of magical education. The academy boasts the largest campus in the world, a highly sought-after and prestigious institution. As students gather for the exam, a boorish noble starts aggressively harassing a much smaller boy. The bully grabs the boy by his collar, infuriated by a perceived slight, while the smaller boy stammers in fear. Just as the bully raises his fist to strike, a hand shoots out and firmly grabs his wrist, stopping the attack. Weiss glares coldly at the thug, his grip tightening as he steps in to protect the defenseless student. The bully cries out in pain, demanding to know who dared to stop his assault. Onlooking students immediately recognize him, whispering about the arrival of the infamous noble Weiss. The crowd gossips about him showing up for the exam, flanked by two beautiful women. They quickly connect the dots, realizing the rumors of his engagement to Lady Cynthia must be true. The bully's face contorts in terror as he finally recognizes the fearsome noble who has him in his grip. He immediately grovels for forgiveness, begging for mercy as Weiss coldly tells him to get lost. As the thug scrambles away, Weiss grimly accepts that his villainous reputation is still going strong. He resolves to slowly change public perception, knowing it's been 2 long years since he began his training. With the day of the Noblesse Magic Academy entrance exam finally here, he stands before the prestigious institution. His gaze hardens with resolve, knowing that on this day he must defeat a certain man to change his fate. The boy he saved stammers his thanks, while Weiss realizes he's finally met his fated rival. The boy introduces himself as Alan, extending a hand in friendship, completely unaware of their destined conflict. Alan recognizes Weiss and wishes him luck, but Weiss's expression remains cold and focused on his mission. The protagonist offers a handshake, hoping they both pass the exam, a gesture Weiss contemplates with grim intensity. A warning bell rings, signaling the start of the exam and interrupting their fated meeting. His companions urge him to move, but Weiss points at Alan, his mind still locked on his rival. A young woman with short hair suddenly appears, telling Alan they need to rush to the exam. The girl pulls Alan away, leaving Weiss to watch as his target begins to depart. She turns back to thank Weiss for his help, revealing herself as Cheryl Elias, Alan's childhood friend. Cheryl and Alan hurry off to the exam, leaving Weiss to ponder this unexpected encounter with the game's main cast. Weiss is suddenly struck by a strange and unsettling feeling he can't quite identify. He recalls the moment Alan offered a handshake, realizing he had hesitated to take it. The simple act of speaking with his fated rival filled him with an unbearable sense of dread. He reaffirms his goal to defeat Alan in the exam, insisting he has no personal dislike for the protagonist. His original plan was to keep a friendly but safe distance from Alan after their fated battle. An instructor announces the start of the practical combat test, but Weiss's mind is elsewhere. As he prepares for the test, a throbbing unease continues to plague his heart. The students are instructed to change into standard-issue gear, hand-me-downs from former students. Dressed in their new combat uniforms, Weiss, Cynthia, and Lilith stand ready for the trial ahead. Spotting his rival in the crowd, Weiss's unease finally crystallizes into a single burning desire to utterly crush Alan. His dark thoughts expand, no longer focused on just Alan, but on crushing every single student in the exam. As an instructor explains the rules, Weiss questions his own sanity, disturbed by his sudden, overwhelming aggression. The instructor offers to intervene in dangerous situations, prompting a large, muscular student to raise his hand. The student complains about his ill-fitting uniform, while the instructor marvels at the sheer size of some of the applicants. Cynthia encourages the large student, promising a new uniform if he passes and telling him to go crush his opponent. While Lilith is impressed by the provided uniforms, Cynthia reveals it's because many students flee the academy, leaving them behind. She gives a chilling smile, explaining that the academy's life is so hellish that dropping out is a common occurrence. The academy is known as the kingdom's most brutal institution, where anyone who falls behind is immediately expelled. Its curriculum is so punishing that some students don't make it out alive, discarding their uniforms as they escape. Weiss reflects that despite its reputation, even his lazy past self managed to pass the entrance exam in the original story. Weiss stands in the pouring rain, his expression hardening with a dark resolve. An instructor calls out the next matchup, pitting Weiss against his fated rival. The opponent is revealed to be Alan, the game's protagonist, just as Weiss had planned. The two rivals lock eyes, one filled with a burning desire to crush his opponent, the other with surprise. As the rain intensifies, the instructors order all other students to the spectator stands. Weiss and Alan take their positions in the center of the arena, ready for their duel. The crowd murmurs in confusion, realizing a magical barrier is protecting them from the downpour. Alan offers a friendly challenge, hoping for a good match against his new acquaintance. Weiss remains silent, his cold focus unbroken even as Lilith cheers him on from the stands. With a final declaration, the instructor signals the beginning of their destined battle. The match begins with Alan launching a furious assault, forcing Weiss onto the defensive. From a low stance, Weiss slams his hand on the ground, unleashing his dark heal spell. A massive magic circle erupts from the ground, its energy blasting Alan away from the center. The protagonist cries out in pain, completely caught off guard by the spell's immediate and powerful effect. From the stands, his companions and Alan's friend watch the one-sided assault with shocked expressions. As Alan writhes in pain, Weiss realizes the dark impulse has vanished, leaving him feeling empty. He grits his teeth, unable to suppress the burning, irrational desire to utterly destroy his rival. He questions the source of this overwhelming and unfamiliar aggression that's taken over his mind. Meanwhile, another applicant in the stands feels a strange sense of euphoria, realizing Weiss is its source. As Alan lies defeated, the blissful student has a sudden realization about the true nature of Weiss's spell. He questions if the original Weiss's villainous nature is the source of his uncontrollable aggression. Sometime after the entrance exams have concluded, the scene shifts back to the academy. Inside a grand office, an unseen figure questions Zevis and Milk about what they did to Weiss. The butler and the S-rank adventurer sit silently as they are interrogated about their young master. The Academy's headmaster, Gills, expresses his astonishment at Weiss Vincent's incredible performance. He reveals that Weiss didn't just pass, but shattered every previous record in all of the exams. The headmaster directly asks the two people responsible for his training to explain his development. He probes them for their opinion on the boy, specifically questioning his new and dangerous abilities. An instructor interrupts their meeting, asking the headmaster for permission to speak. The instructor Darius clarifies that while Weiss's scores are the highest, he technically didn't break any official records. The headmaster recalls that Weiss actually tied for first place with a brilliant female student from the previous year. Milk casually dismisses her involvement, claiming she only provided some very basic training. Zevis also downplays his role, stating he merely supported him with meals before having a sudden realization. The butler clarifies that he simply fed Weiss a diet rich in protein, leaving the instructor utterly confused. Zevis lists the surprisingly modern menu of soy, dairy, and chicken tenders he used to build Weiss's strength. The instructor erupts in anger, refusing to believe a simple diet could explain Weiss's mastery of 6 magical elements. He turns to Milk for an answer, only to find her casually chugging from a massive mug during the serious meeting. As the instructor fumes, Milk passes out on the table, with Zevis calmly noting she must have brought her own drink. The headmaster tries to calm the situation, but the instructor can only think of the cruelty of Milk's methods. A flashback shows the aftermath of the duel, with a defeated Alan on the ground as Weiss looks down on him in the rain. The furious instructor reveals that Alan was nearly killed in the duel. He glares with contempt, placing all the blame on that brat Weiss. Darius reveals his personal stake, explaining that Alan is his own exceptionally talented student. He directs his rage at the passed-out Milk, accusing her of spouting nonsense. Milk lifts her head with a sinister grin, accusing the instructor of being jealous that his student lost. As the headmaster tries to break up the argument, Darius blames Milk for not guiding Weiss properly. Zevis calmly addresses the headmaster, acknowledging his concerns about Weiss's enrollment. The butler confidently assures him that his young master would never use his power to bully the weak. Outside the academy, Weiss and his companions walk away, as Zevis declares that the boy has changed. Holding their acceptance letters, Weiss is no longer consumed by his power, but driven by genuine effort to become a courageous man. With their acceptance letters in hand, the trio celebrates their successful entry into the academy. Weiss gets his first look at the main academy building, where the next chapter of his life will unfold. The new students, including Weiss's group and his rival Alan, gather for their first day of class. Their new instructor, Chloe, introduces herself, her stern expression promising a difficult school year. A montage of faces shows the diverse group of students, all now officially part of the prestigious academy. Weiss, flanked by his fiancée and his maid, prepares for the challenges of the Noblesse Magic Academy. As the class begins, Weiss's gaze remains sharp, his mind already focused on his next move. Across the room, Alan catches his eye, offering a friendly smile despite their brutal duel. Weiss reflects on his victory, remembering how he successfully defeated Alan during the entrance exam. He recalls being consumed by the original Weiss's dark emotions, nearly killing Alan, who refused to stay down. He recalls Alan's terrifying resilience, growing stronger with every blow he took. Despite his opponent's tenacity, Weiss ultimately secured a landslide victory in the end. The experience leaves him frustrated, feeling like he's just witnessed the true indomitable spirit of a protagonist. His thoughts are interrupted as the instructor snaps her fingers, causing a glowing sigil to appear on every student's hand. She reveals that each of them has been granted a starting balance of 1,000 points. The instructor explains this point system will be a crucial measure of their worth until graduation. The students murmur in confusion, wondering about the purpose of these mysterious points. As she writes the base score on the board, the instructor clarifies that everyone has 1,000 points, except for Weiss. Based on his overwhelming exam results, Weiss has been awarded a staggering 2,000 points. The entire class erupts in shock, unable to comprehend his ridiculously high starting score. Weiss questions the instructor, wondering if giving him double the points is fair to the other students. The rest of the class erupts with questions, demanding a proper explanation for the mysterious point system. The instructor decides that instead of explaining, it would be easier for them to learn through direct experience. She orders the entire class to grab wooden swords and head to the training grounds immediately. On the vast training grounds, the instructor stands before the armed students and announces the start of a combat test. She looks at them coldly, clarifying that while they've enrolled, she never promised they would all graduate. The instructor reveals the harsh truth. Any student whose points drop to 0 will be expelled on the spot. She declares that they will all fight today until someone is forced to leave the academy for good. Elsewhere, Milk relaxes in a forest, being served drinks and fanned by a group of defeated thugs. She sighs, lamenting how boring her days have become since her star pupil left for the academy. Milk's eyes narrow with a sudden, mischievous idea. She decides to kill her boredom by getting a teaching license at the very same academy. Back at the academy, a new student approaches Weiss's group, calling him out by name. He introduces himself as Louis, fawning over Weiss's incredible performance in the mock battle. But his smarmy demeanor earns him a cold shoulder from both Cynthia and Lilith. Weiss recognizes him from the game as Louis Mycent, a top student with a brilliant future. Yet, on the training grounds, that same brilliant student is now kneeling in defeat before the instructor. The instructor coldly presents his point token, which now reads a definitive 0. With his points depleted, the instructor declares Louis Mycent officially expelled from the academy. The harsh reality of the academy system sinks in as the first student is cast out before the day even ends. Weiss watches in disbelief as the brilliant student from before is brought to his knees. He learns that Louis was utterly crushed in a duel against the protagonist, Alan. Later in the cafeteria, the brutal reality of the academy hangs over the students. Weiss stares at his meal, his mind racing as he tries to figure out his next move. He recalls his simple plan to beat Alan but otherwise keep the story from derailing. But with the main heroine now his fiancée, his carefully laid plans are already in shambles. The unexpected expulsion of a key character confirms his fear. The plot is spiraling into chaos. He realizes the most dangerous change is the dark, villainous emotions of his past self resurfacing. Ever since meeting his rival, an unfamiliar and aggressive impulse has been pushing him to lash out. His plan to slowly build trust is replaced by an overwhelming desire to crush everyone in his path. He worries that if he gives in to these dark emotions, he'll become the hated villain he was destined to be. A voice cuts through his thoughts, asking if his true desire is to crush everyone. To his surprise, Cynthia calmly agrees, saying she's fine with his decision if it's what he truly wants. He's completely baffled by her calm acceptance of his violent thoughts as they return their trays. She reminds him with a knowing look that this is the Noblesse Magic Academy, a place of ruthless competition. Cynthia admits she was once worried about him, recalling a time when he seemed far too kind and weak. She explains that in this brutal world, one can't afford mercy, and his ruthlessness in the exam has changed her opinion of him. The intense conversation is briefly interrupted by the cafeteria chef offering her another serving. Weiss is left completely speechless, unable to process her shocking change in perspective. Lilith chimes in, agreeing with Cynthia, who concludes that to survive in this world, they must all be just as ruthless. Lilith declares her unwavering support, telling him that following his own desires is what truly matters. As the chef offers more food, Weiss is lost in thought, processing the girl's surprising words. Cynthia adds that as his fiancé, he should possess the spirit to crush all of his rivals. Visibly moved by their encouragement, Weiss looks at both of them with sincere gratitude. He admits their talk has helped, but he's still unsure how to reconcile with his dark impulses. Lilith then offers a simple solution for his indecisiveness: a coin toss to determine his path. He considers her suggestion, realizing that leaving his next move to fate is a valid option. Acknowledging that the original story is already beyond his control, he prepares to flip the coin. With a determined grin, he decides to stop overthinking and let chance dictate his future. But just as he flips the coin, the cafeteria chef grabs him, tearfully insisting he finish his meal. The coin is knocked from his hand, its path arcing across the cafeteria as his fate hangs in the balance. Weiss watches in shock as the coin rolls away, his chance to decide his path seemingly lost. The coin's design is revealed, with the kingdom's castle on the front and a fearsome dragon on the back. He had decided that heads meant he would fight his dark impulses and try to befriend Alan. But if it landed on tails, he would embrace his villainous nature, a choice now left to chance as the coin rolls away. His rival Alan suddenly appears, holding the coin and calmly returning it to him. Alan cheerfully explains that despite their brutal duel, he still managed to enroll in the academy. He admits with a determined smile that he's glad, as he was hoping for a chance to meet Weiss again. The protagonist then corrects himself, revealing his true desire is to have a rematch. With a knowing smirk, Weiss accepts the unspoken challenge and takes the coin from his rival's hand. With a villainous grin, he reveals the dragon side of the coin, accepting Alan's challenge and his own dark fate. The two rivals leave the emotional chef behind, their newfound rivalry now firmly established. The combat tests continue, with one student unleashing a devastating magical blast against another in the arena. With a single effortless move, Weiss sends his opponent flying, prompting the instructor to end the match. The defeated student, Chris Schlegel, is immediately declared expelled, her academy life over in an instant. The large student from before roars with exertion, putting all his strength into his own high-stakes duel. His efforts prove futile as Weiss easily parries his attack and lands a decisive counterstrike. The large student, Gustav Gregorio, is also declared expelled, another casualty of Weiss's ruthless rampage. The expulsions pile up as two more students, Karuna and Lehman, are shown defeated and cast out of the academy. The expulsions become a blur as Weiss defeats student after student, leaving a trail of broken dreams in his wake. Cynthia notes with a smirk that he's already expelled 6 more rivals today. He commands his team with practiced ease, ordering Cynthia and Lilith to flank their opponents. With a dark grin, he internally thanks Alan for helping him decide to no longer hold back. He fully embraces his villainous role, vowing to crush the protagonist and shatter the game's original plot. Elsewhere, Cynthia and Lilith engage another team, surprising their opponents with their coordinated assault. The scene shifts to a lonely girl in a dark dorm room, counting the days inside the oppressive academy. She pushes herself to endure, knowing she's at her limit with only 22 days left before a fateful event. Clutching her point token, she desperately hopes for a miracle, her future hanging by a thread. The instructor declares the match over, handing another decisive victory to Team Weiss. The two rivals face off in a tense standoff, both exhausted but neither willing to back down. A month has passed since enrollment, and 10 students have already been expelled from the academy. He smirks with satisfaction, knowing he's personally responsible for 7 of those expulsions. Students gather to check the latest rankings for their magic training exercises. They're stunned to discover that Weiss has ranked first in every single field of study. His cold, unwavering gaze reveals the depth of his newfound resolve. A fellow student confronts him, questioning how his power could be possible without a second chance at life. The student, identified as Duke Billion, demands to know the secret behind his overwhelming strength. Billion recalls how Weiss effortlessly navigated Cheryl's intricate magic traps during a recent flag battle. He then instantly flattened the protagonist and snatched the flag, securing another victory. That single test skyrocketed his score to 5,700, placing him at the top of the class by a landslide. Weiss coldly silences Duke Billion, who continues to rage about his seemingly unfair advantage. Elsewhere, a dejected Alan apologizes to his teammates, frustrated by another loss to Weiss. His teammates watch with concern as the protagonist sits in defeat. Cheryl tries to lift his spirits, encouraging him to focus on winning their next encounter. The scene cuts between Weiss and Cheryl, both sharing a look of intense determination. Weiss tries to reassure himself that his new aggressive path is the correct one. He recalls how the original Weiss vented his frustrations through cruel and underhanded methods, leading to his ruin. He justifies his actions, believing that unlike his past self, he has no reason to be hated. He now channels his dark impulses into official matches, unleashing his aggression fairly. His overwhelming power, however, earns him a menacing glare from Cheryl, leaving him visibly unnerved. Weiss watches nervously as the instructor confronts another student in the classroom. The instructor delivers a chilling ultimatum, warning a student that failure to score points in the next test has dire consequences. The student, identified as Carta Viole, quietly accepts her fate, her eyes filled with resignation. Weiss's eyes widen in recognition, realizing he knows this character and her tragic story from the game. The instructor coldly dismisses Carta's attempt to appear strong and walks away, leaving the warning hanging in the air. He recalls from the game that Carta's best friend was supposed to use her own frustration to motivate Carta to pass. But his game knowledge brings a grim realization. In the original story, Carta was expelled after this very exam. Weiss sweats, remembering this was the exact progression of her side story in the game. He dreads what comes next, knowing the chain of events that leads to her downfall. The horrifying truth dawns on him as he recalls expelling Chris Schlegel, realizing he just eliminated Carta's best friend and motivator. He realizes that without her friend, Carta is fated to quietly disappear from the academy. Just then, 2 other students approach Carta, smugly asking about her plans for the upcoming exam. They mockingly remind her that the test is a tag battle and question if she even has a partner. The bullies twist the knife, pointing out that her best friend has already been expelled. The girls then turn to Weiss, gossiping about the very student he just drove out of the academy. They laugh while recounting how Weiss utterly crushed her friend in a single match, costing her all her points. Their laughter dies as they realize Weiss has been standing right behind them, with Carta watching in shock. Ignoring the bullies, Weiss extends a hand to the stunned Carta, offering to be her partner for the exam. He takes her to a secluded cliffside overlooking the academy to discuss his unexpected proposal. Lacking confidence, Carta timidly asks why a top student like him would ever want to team up with her. Carta blushes, stammering that he already has Cynthia before her eyes widen in sudden shock. She insists they're a poor match, pointing out her low rank compared to his top position in the academy. Her fear intensifies as she spots a menacing, shadowy figure lurking in the nearby woods. The figure is revealed to be Cynthia, radiating an incredibly intimidating and jealous aura from the trees. Weiss calmly asks what's wrong, completely oblivious to her panic as she stares past him in terror. He smirks, correctly guessing that her hesitation is because of his well-known fiancé. He confidently explains that Cynthia wants him to be the best, and will understand this is just a strategy for victory. Carta frantically points behind him, stammering about the terrifying killing intent she just felt. She looks again, but the menacing presence has vanished from the woods without a trace. Weiss turns to get her attention, but she remains stunned and confused by the chilling encounter. He coldly states he has no time to feel sorry for every student who gets expelled, but he admits it would be a real waste if a talented student like her were to be cast out. He praises her impressive flying magic, a skill he observed from afar. He notes that even skilled mages struggle with it, making her control of it all the more valuable. Therefore, he concludes that partnering with her is the most efficient strategy for the upcoming exam. Meanwhile, Carta is still shaken, convinced she wasn't imagining the menacing presence in the woods. A voice suddenly cuts through the silence, explaining the reason for her unease. Cynthia reveals herself, calmly emerging from behind a tree with a confident smile. She compliments Carta's impressive sensing ability, acknowledging that she was detected. Cynthia wonders aloud if Carta's perception is even sharper than Weiss's own, leaving the girl stunned. Cynthia smirks, revealing that Weiss also failed to notice Lilith, a master of assassination techniques hiding nearby. The revelation sends Carta into a panic, while Cynthia watches with a serene and knowing smile. Lilith appears, explaining that the upcoming tag battle is a joint exam involving all 3 school years. She elaborates that Weiss chose Carta for her unique skills, knowing she and Cynthia could handle upperclassmen alone. Both girls place a hand on the stunned Carta, giving her their blessing to partner with Weiss while they team up. Overwhelmed by their intense presence, Carta is frozen in fear, on the verge of tears. Unaware of the drama, Weiss officially declares his decision to partner with her for the exam. He wastes no time, announcing that their special training will begin immediately to prepare for the difficult test. Carta can only stare back at him, still clutching her staff, her expression a mix of fear and uncertainty. The grueling training commences, pushing a tearful Carta to her absolute limits under Weiss's demanding watch. As they walk through the woods, Weiss brings up the subject of her specialized flying magic. He confidently claims that while the magic is tricky, he's already starting to get the hang of it. Carta blushes, silently recalling how he could barely stay in the air for more than 2 seconds. He then dismisses his own training, explaining that it isn't actually necessary for their exam. Their plan simply requires him to ride on her staff while she does all the flying. He admits, however, that he saw this as a rare opportunity to learn a new skill from an expert. He explains that any magic can become a powerful weapon, depending on how it's utilized. Weiss points out that he just so happens to have a perfect teacher in her, the flying magic specialist. He then apologizes for dragging her into his personal training, even though it has nothing to do with the exam. His unexpected sincerity leaves the flustered Carta completely speechless. He looks at her with a confident smirk, vowing that he absolutely will not let her get expelled. In return, Weiss asks if she would continue to teach him her flying magic even after the exam is over. Carta smiles to herself, realizing the rumors she'd heard about him were completely wrong. She laughs, surprised to find that the infamous noble is actually an incredibly hard worker. With newfound confidence, she happily agrees to be his teacher. As they walk away, she reflects on how everyone called him a lazy disgrace, but he's nothing like that. Inspired by his dedication, she resolves to become a diligent student just like him. From a window above, a stern-looking woman with glasses watches them, identifying Weiss by name. Elsewhere, Headmaster Gills reviews a report, finding Weiss's exam scores to be unbelievably high for a first year. The woman reports that not only are his scores high, but he's also single-handedly responsible for over half the expulsions. The woman acknowledges Weiss's impressive skills, but notes that the entire first-year class is exceptionally talented. She singles out one student who surprised her the most, Darius's own apprentice, Alan. She recalls how Alan repeatedly rose from the brink of defeat, growing stronger with each setback. The woman then mentions 2 other students who also caught her completely by surprise. The 2 are revealed to be locked in an intense and furious duel with each other. She identifies the formidable students as none other than Lilith and Cynthia. The woman notes their growth has been at a pace that would have been unimaginable when they first enrolled. She observes that the 2 of them have been training as if their very lives depended on it. Their training was shockingly reckless, conducted without any reinforced safety gear. They even engaged in dangerous combat using real swords instead of the standard wooden practice weapons. The woman reveals their training was a constant life-or-death struggle. This brutal regimen forged them into incredibly powerful fighters. After their duel, both girls are left battered and exhausted, pushing past their limits. They immediately sit down to heal each other's wounds, their rivalry momentarily set aside. Cynthia praises Lilith's strength, but Lilith insists that Cynthia is the truly impressive one. With a bloodied but determined face, Lilith vows to become even stronger. Cynthia declares she won't just follow Weiss, but will stand beside him as a proud and powerful equal. Lilith agrees, stating her own desire to grow stronger is for Weiss's sake. Cynthia resolves to become someone Weiss can rely on in times of danger. As Lilith humbly downplays her own power, Cynthia reassures her that she's already formidable. With matching sinister smiles, the two girls come to a temporary understanding. Cynthia declares their immediate goal is to separate the unsuspecting Carta from Weiss's side. Elsewhere, Carta shivers in her room, suddenly feeling an inexplicable chill down her spine. A new day dawns, bringing with it the start of the joint tag team exam. Students gather in the academy courtyard, standing within a massive teleportation circle. Duke Billion suggests that he, Alan, and Cheryl decide their fates with a game of rock, paper, scissors. He loudly declares the loser must team up with a random student, a proposal Alan readily accepts. As the trio begins their game, Weiss and Carta have already formed their team and walk away. An instructor announces Weiss and Carta's turn, preparing to teleport them to the exam location. Arriving in a dense forest, Weiss immediately enacts their plan to hunt down high-ranking upperclassmen. Weiss flashes a confident grin, asking a hesitant Carta if she's ready for the exam. An announcement echoes across the mountains, confirming all students have been transported to their starting positions for the test. As Weiss and Carta prepare, other students, including a determined Cynthia and Lilith, brace for the start of the joint 3-year exam. The tag survival test officially begins, pitting every student against each other in a battle for their academy lives. Elsewhere, a bored Milk relaxes, struggling to recall an important task while a captured man suffers nearby. Surrounded by defeated pirates on a beach, she laments her uneventful life, using one as a footrest. Her eyes widen as a brilliant idea suddenly cuts through her boredom. She excitedly remembers her plan to get a teaching license at the very same academy her pupil attends.